I wrote Napalm's Embrace because I had an inner need to convey the story that's contained in this book. This is about the civil affairs function. It's not infantry-centric. Most of those books have already been written, and they're excellent. I had to write this story because it was inside of me and had to be told. There are approximately 33,000 books written on the Vietnam War. This one is unique in that literature because this book deals with the civil affairs function, which is a function that is rarely written about in fiction. Now, civil affairs, the intent of that function is to win the hearts and minds of the villages. So it's a very difficult thing to do that when you have no training in the language or no training in the function, and you're really trying to convince the South Vietnamese people to support a government that they don't like. So the book is essentially a historical romance set in Vietnam in 1968 at the height of the war. It's a love that matures between the civil affairs officer Jack Brady and his interpreter Tran Thi Som. The most important thing about Napalm's Embrace for the reader is that when a country decides to go to war, what this book illustrates is the historical and cultural depth of the country that you're going into. So Americans have a tendency to be technologically arrogant. You know, bombs and combatants are not enough. You really have to understand the country you're going into, the culture, its history, where they came from, how they got to be where they're at now, and why are they fighting. The reason why it's important to understand what happened in Vietnam is because it's very much similar to the wars that are being fought today in the Middle East. First of all, the enemy you're fighting are invisible. You can't tell the difference between the people you're trying to kill and the people you're trying to help. The governments we're supporting were always questionable. Certainly the governments in Vietnam were unstable. We look at the governments in Iraq, they're quite unstable, and some of the other countries. The tactics and the strategy in Vietnam were always under question as they are today. I've never heard the word strategy used so often, which has so little meaning. 200 Marines were killed at Khe Sanh and 2,500 wounded, but yet the High Command thought it was best that after incurring those casualties that we abandon the Khe Sanh base. So the strategies and the tactics really were very difficult to understand. There was always a question of when are the American forces going to pull out. And that's been the question during the Obama administration about the war in Iraq. After the surge in 2007, the president ordered that the American troops be withdrawn, and that created a vacuum into which now ISIS has grown. So the connection between Vietnam and the current wars is absolutely direct, and it's important to understand. Napalm's Embrace is unique in the Vietnam literature. It is an engaging story with vividly drawn characters that explores multiple aspects of what transpired during that era. So I highly recommend it. It has received good reviews so far, like on Amazon. And Vietnam Veterans of America, a national organization, gave it a very positive review, so it is well worth the read.